Although this sounds more like something a movie villain would think up, the Sun Gun was a theoretical orbital weapon that was researched by the Nazis during the war. The concept was first thought up in 1929 by the German physicist Hermann Oberth. He designed a space station from which a 100-meter-wide concave mirror would be used to reflect sunlight onto a concentrated point on Earth. Once the war began, Nazi scientists expanded on Oberth's concept that would be part of a colossal space station which would be 5,100 miles above the surface of the Earth. According to Nazi scientists, the heat this mirror would be able to project could boil oceans and turn entire cities into ash. Apparently, the Americans had managed to capture an experimental model of the Sun Gun in 1945. Turns out that after being questioned by Allied officers, the Germans claimed that the technology for the Sun Gun was 50 to 100 years out of reach. This may sound like the stuff of science fiction, but during the early 1940s, Nazi engineers had managed to develop a sonic cannon that could literally shake a person apart from the inside. Or at least that's what they claimed. Designed by Dr. Richard Wallachek, the cannon consisted of a methane gas combustion chamber, leading to two large parabolic reflectors, the final version of which had a diameter over 3 meters. The dishes were pulse-detonated at around 44 Hz and were connected to a chamber composed of several subunits firing tubes. These tubes would allow a mixture of methane and oxygen in the combustion chamber, which when ignited would turn these gases into noise that could kill. This infrasound, magnified by the dish reflectors, caused vertigo and nausea at 300 yards by vibrating the middle ear bones and shaking the cochlear fluid within the inner ear. Apparently, the sound waves created pressures that could kill a man 50 meters away in half a minute. To say the least, this is very unconvincing, since this supposed sonic cannon was only tested on laboratory animals and was never tested on human beings. In theory, this thing would have been very vulnerable to enemy fire, since if the parabolic reflectors were damaged, it would render this weapon completely useless. So in reality, sonic weapons were most likely large, cumbersome, close-range devices that resulted in ruptured eardrums. So much for shaking a person apart. This was the brainchild of Dr. Zippermeyer, an Austrian inventor who created a number of odd anti-aircraft weapons for the Nazis. The cannon worked by generating explosions in a combustion chamber, which would be released through special nozzles, and finally directed towards their target. A scale model was built, which proved to be successful, as these quote-unquote whirlwind blasts supposedly shattered wooden planks at a range of 600 feet. Despite having a working scale model, the project was scrapped after a full-size version could not replicate the same effect at high-altitude targets. The actual whirlwind cannon itself was found rusting and abandoned by puzzled Allied forces on the artillery proving ground at Hillersleben in April 1945. Although the British engineer Barnes Wallis was the first to invent a bouncing bomb, dubbed Upkeep, the Nazis decided to make one of their own after recovering an intact one. Their reverse-engineered version, nicknamed Kurt, was intended to skip along the surface of the water and then explode when it hit a ship. Luckily for the Allies, Nazi scientists couldn't understand the importance of backspin on these bombs. As a result, they tried to stabilize their bouncing bomb by fitting booster rockets, which in turn, these too had problems in testing. After having failed to recreate Upkeep, and after wasting countless hours, time, and resources, the Nazis had no other choice but to add the bouncing bomb to many of their abandoned projects. Retrospectively described by many as the world's first stealth bomber, this was the first pure flying wing plane to be powered by a jet engine. Developed by the Horten brothers, this tailless aircraft with fixed wings resembles a glider and was outfitted with stealth technology, a first for its time. Its sleek design ensured that it would be harder to detect and track with radar than other aircraft, since it would have a smaller radar cross-section. Despite proving to be very successful in test flights, this aircraft simply failed to make an impact in the war, as it flew for the first time in 1944.
Also known as the Great Gustav, this is the single largest cannon ever built and used in history. Only 2 were ever built, the second one was called Dora. Designed by Krupp Industries, this ultra-heavy railway gun weighed around 1,350 tons and could fire 7-ton shells up to a range of 29 miles. If you're having trouble grasping the vast scale of this monster, it took 3 days and a workforce of 250 men to assemble the 2 800mm guns, 2,500 men to lay all the twin rail tracks, and half an hour to load the damn thing. Fortunately, the only country they could successfully fire at was Russia, the only country large enough for this weapon to actually hit.
Completed in late 1944, this super heavy tank holds the title for being the heaviest tank ever built. Weighing in at around a colossal 188 tons, this ended up bringing its downfall. There simply was no engine powerful enough that would have powered this beast to acceptable speeds. Although the design called for a maximum to 20 kilometers per hour, the Maus prototype could only reach 13 kilometers per hour. However, being the heaviest tank on the planet did have its merits. Instead of crossing bridges, its weight made this impossible, the Maus could ford deep streams and could even go underwater in deeper rivers. In the end, the Maus proved to be too costly to produce, and thus only 2 were ever built, one of which was never completed.
Some of you will love this one. What are these little guys, you may ask? Remember that toy RC car that you had as a kid? Well, the Nazis simply strapped a bomb to that, sort of like a mini RC car of doom. Also known as Beetle tanks to the Allies, these little remote-controlled bombs could clear out bunkers, destroy tanks, and disrupt infantry formations. These small contraptions could carry up to 100 kilograms of high explosives at a top speed of around 6 miles per hour, which isn't that bad considering what they were carrying. Their major downside was that these things were controlled via a joystick control box, which was connected by 2,000 feet of triple-strand cable. All the Allies needed to do was to cut said wire, which would render the mighty Goliath, oh, the irony, absolutely useless.
The Sturmgewehr 44, or SG-44, is considered by many to be the world's first assault rifle. The SG-44's design was so successful that modern assault rifles such as the infamous AK-47 and M16 designs are derived from it. It is said that Hitler was impressed so much by this weapon that he personally named it as the Sturmgewehr 44, or Storm Assault Rifle 44. Although this weapon was a unique blend of a carbine, submachine gun, and an automatic rifle, it arrived too late in the war to make much of an impact on the battlefields of war-torn Europe. Despite not having much of an impact, the SG-44 had the coolest weapon attachments available at the time. Enter the Zielgerät 1229 infrared vision sight, codenamed Vampire, which aided infantry and snipers to shoot accurately at night. It was first used in combat during the last months of the war and weighed about 5 pounds, but it also had to be connected to a 30-pound battery pack strapped to the soldier's back. Infrared vision not cool enough for you? Well, how about this badass Krumlov, or curved barrel attachment, that allows you to shoot around corners? The idea of being able to fire weapons effectively around corners had existed for a while, but Nazi Germany was the first to actually attempt it. Engineers came up with versions for 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90-degree bends. However, these curved barrels had very short lifespans, approximately 300 rounds for the 30-degree version and 160 rounds for the 45-degree variant, as the barrel and bullets fired would be under great stress.
If you enjoyed this video and are still not subscribed, please consider it, as it really helps me out a lot. Thank you.